I know there is not a marquee game this week. Okay, I understand that we are coming off the heels of Georgia versus Alabama, and that was just a titanic matchup. That was the 8 p.m. prime time CBS game of the year. There's a lot of intrigue this week. I want you to pay attention now, because these are the kind of weeks normally I make it metaphorical, as I do with pretty much everything on the show at this point. It's not a show without 10 metaphors. To walking towards one of those barns. I grew up in Harris County, Georgia. Barns all over the place. Some of them occupied, some of them empty and, dare I say, haunted. You walk up to one of those barns late at night, you don't necessarily know what's in it, you just know it's no good for you. And these kinds of weeks, you know, the weeks where people say, I may go to the park with you this weekend, babe. I don't really think there's anything happening in college football. Those are the kind of weekends where you check your phone at your picnic or your wedding in the fall, and you look and you say, who beat who? Who's leading who? That's the kind of weekend that we are approaching. I'm going to give you fair warning. Could be in the SEC, could be elsewhere, could be both. But let's talk about these games. South Carolina is headed to LSU. Earlier in the week, LSU was one of our best bets. We backed off that hard. Really. I'm about to show you how hard in just a second. LSU is currently anywhere from a 6.5 to a 7-point favorite, depending on where you look. It is a Saturday, 7 o'clock kickoff, Eastern time, of course, on ESPN. If you're in the storyline crowd, if storylines are your flavor instead of just X's and O's, blocking and tackling, pass catching, this is the game for you. Not only is it still Cocktober, which means anything's possible for South Carolina. We understand that. We all own a calendar. But you've got NCAA sanctions looming for LSU. You've got Ed Orgeron doing all sorts of unsavory things off the field this week and being photographed while doing so, and that's about as far as I'll go on that. You've got backup quarterbacks starting for LSU. Multiple backup quarterbacks are going to play Saturday. You've got a defense that is still very much in a state of, shall we say, flux, for lack of another more strong term. And then, all the while, you got South Carolina, who just kind of casually in must-win mode has put 2 wins together, and here they come as nearly a touchdown underdog. TJ Finley, according to our folks over at Go247 earlier today, that's the guy who's probably going to start at quarterback for LSU. Raw would probably be, talented but raw would probably be the best way to describe him. And I'm looking at this thing, I really feel uneasy. The harder I looked at it, the more uneasy I felt for LSU. South Carolina's not a great defensive team. There are very few great defensive teams in the SEC this year, but I'll tell you what they can do. They have shown the propensity to force turnovers. Now, you would think in a normal year, well, big deal. This is LSU, okay? Just use any of half a dozen premier backs and just lean on them in the ground game. Yeah, it sounds like a good idea. Probably not going to happen. Probably not going to happen. Hasn't happened so far this year. This is a bad third down team. Either way you slice it for LSU, pick a side of the ball. This is not a great third down team. Good distracted teams find ways to get out of these sorts of games. If you're a good team, but you have distractions like LSU's had off the field this week, if you're a great team and you have distractions, and you still find a way to win. LSU's not a good team right now. So this is a fairly poor team with backup quarterbacks playing and a lot of off-field distractions, up to and including the coaching staff this week. I think South Carolina's going to win the game. Not only do I think they're going to cover, I think Cocktober rolls on, and I think South Carolina wins the game. Now, where I don't expect an upset is in Knoxville Saturday. The 3:30 Eastern Time CBS game of the week. Alabama is currently a 21-point favorite over the suddenly struggling Tennessee Volunteers. I think everything about both of these teams' game plans involves shortening as much as possible. They would love to have this thing over in the amount of time normally a couple of service academies playing against each other would see a game over. You know, nice, solid 3-hour game. Let's get out of here. Toss it to the studio where they got to fill 45 minutes until the late kicks start. Late kicks, not late kick, of course. Tennessee, I think, should have decent success running the ball in this game. Decent success. I think that's reasonable to expect against Alabama. However, when you watched, Colin's showing it to you right now, when you watched the way that Alabama ended the Georgia game last week, Nick Saban had to take Cedric, who normally carries his cup of water around, he probably had to have Cedric go get him a towel so he could wipe his mouth. He had to be drooling. When he watched the way they held the ball for the final 6 minutes and change of the game, when he watched the ability of that offensive line to surge against one of, if not the best defensive fronts in the conference, fall forward for Najee Harris over 150 yards on the ground, that's the kind of second half they would love to see here. It may not mean another 50 points put on the board, the likes of which they had against Texas A&M, but it would mean a comfortable victory. So what do you see from Tennessee? Who starts at quarterback for Tennessee? I've heard Jeremy Pruitt this week talking about injury being a situation that he's dealing with at quarterback. Now, there's some speculative kind of trains of thought out there that, hey, maybe he's building himself a trap door to not start Garantano, but save face for Garantano, and that's the reason he didn't start, because he's hurt. I don't know that. I don't really know that Jeremy Pruitt has thought too deeply about this. I just think he wants to know who gives him the best chance to win the game. Now, selfishly, I want to see Harrison Bailey. I've made that point loud and clear this week, so we'll see. But focus and physicality, if it's not there, Tennessee doesn't have much of a shot here. So that Bama defense, one thing I'll watch in the second half before we move on from this game is, I told you, the blueprint for them ultimately winning a national championship is not going to be rock solid defense. I don't think they're capable of playing that at any point this year. But an opportunistic defense, one that forces turnovers, that's a theme that you want to see continue. A lot of people believe turnovers aren't predictable week to week. Well, that's true. But a team that's good and adept at forcing turnovers and being in the right place and contesting balls and batting balls, getting in passing lanes, affecting the quarterback, that kind of stuff does translate. And maybe the turnover number is in flux week to week. So I'm going to take Alabama to win. And I never like that number in the 18 to 24 point range. Like, if I'm going to take Alabama to win but not cover, I like that thing to be up north of 24 points. Because I don't ever see them let off the gas at a 21-point lead is what I'm saying. 28-point lead, they react a lot different. So I'll take Alabama to win. I'll take Alabama to cover. Here's one that I think I've identified a little bit of a mismatch on. I think the number's too low. Auburn -3 at Ole Miss. It's an early kick, so we'll know very, very quickly on Saturday. It's noon Eastern time. It's on SEC Network. This game feels a lot like Oklahoma, Texas. Remember that a couple of weeks ago where we talked about it and we were all looking forward to watching it, but yet we said, how could anyone think they could predict this game? Why do I say that? Well, the number 9. Last week, Bo Nix, quarterback for Auburn, Matt Corral, quarterback for Ole Miss, combined to throw 9 turnovers. Friends, I didn't say that's what they have totaled this year. I said last week. That's what they combined to throw. So when you throw that amount of turnovers, the potential for that amount of turnovers, any kind of valid prediction, any kind of predictability kind of goes out the window, doesn't it? Well, we'll see. Here's what I think we're going to see from Auburn. This is just a hunch. Knowing Gus Malzahn and having followed him for a long time, I think he's taken a fistful of that play calling duty and that overall offensive responsibility back and putting it on his plate this week. And I think that he and pretty much everyone else who has watched this offense, one of the few bright spots has been a true freshman, Tank Bigsby. I think they'll ride him. I think they'll ride him hard this week. Ole Miss does not have exactly an impenetrable defense up front. You want a low variance. You want to limit their possessions. It's not complicated. Malzahn's always been at his best. When the run game leads the way, Chad Morris came in. You're going to throw the ball more. We're going to revolutionize our passing game. No, you're not. You're just going to throw the ball to the other team. I wanted to see it just as bad as you guys did. It's not working out. So at this point, season's on the line for them. Season is very much on the line. There's a lot of stuff going on down there behind the scenes at Auburn. They need a win in the worst way. So, third down this game, I think Auburn will perform. This is, again, just a hunch. I think third down offensively will be much better percentage-wise, conversion-wise in this game than their season average has been. And because of that, I think Auburn's going to be able to tilt this game in the second half and control it a whole lot more, because game control has not been their thing this year. I like them enough in the secondary. I'm going to take Auburn to win. I'm going to take Auburn to cover. This is a game that we may actually make a move on closer to kickoff in terms of one of those official plays, one of our best bets. As for now, we're just picking Auburn to win and cover and leave it at that. And the last one is Kentucky -5.5. That's right, road favorite, Cats, at Missouri. I think Missouri is undervalued right now. I think they're very undervalued. They, I thought, went a long way in finding their offensive rhythm and even their offensive identity coming out of that Tennessee game. That's when they played LSU. You may say, well, Josh, everyone finds their offensive rhythm against LSU. Like Harris County High School will probably stand a half-decent chance of hanging 28 on them. Yeah, I can't disagree, but the point is Connor Bazelak is now, and probably always was, the right quarterback for this team. So having said that, they were supposed to play last week. They didn't. It was due to another team's COVID situation. So they had a bye week that they didn't expect. I really expect Missouri to play a solid game Saturday. Kentucky has forced a ton of turnovers. If you have some formula, if you have some magic elixir that you pour into this potion and then it kind of spits out a projection that lets you know that's going to continue, I'd pick Kentucky in a heartbeat. I love what they've done on defense just as much as you guys have. But I think some of that is random, some of it's skill, some of it's forced. I had a big argument earlier this week about that. Like, you're not giving Kentucky any credit. How much more credit can I give them? They forced turnovers. They won in convincing fashion against Tennessee. But they're also in a back-to-back road spot in a very much due-down spot after having won at Tennessee for the first time since 1738, 40? I don't know. It's a long time ago, though. So I think Missouri finds some things this week. And not only will I take them to cover, I think Missouri is going to also pull a mild point spread upset. I think Missouri is going to beat Kentucky outright, too.